On 18th August 2023, there was a brilliant article in The Atlantic in USA. The article, titled "The Constitution Prohibits Trump from Ever Being President Again," by J. Michael Luttig, a former federal judge on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fourth Circuit, and Laurence H. Tribe, University Professor of Constitutional Law Emeritus at Harvard Law School. The decision of whether or not to disqualify Donald J. Trump from contesting in the 2024 presidential election is a complex one that would likely involve multiple parties. No matter what happens, Trump is a God-sent politician to expose the institutional warts in the land of the free and the hypocrisy imbued in them preaching democracy to the world. And Trump is running hot as a possible candidate, and each of the 4 indictments he is facing has added to his electability as GOP candidate and not eligibility. It cannot get any better to expose America as an abomination among democratic polities, nothing less than that. The Constitution does not explicitly disqualify anyone from running for president. So the first question is whether there is any legal basis for disqualifying Trump. Some legal experts have argued that Trump could be disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment of their Constitution, which prohibits anyone who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the same or given in or comfort to the enemies thereof from holding office. However, there is no consensus on whether Section 3 applies to Trump, and the Supreme Court has never ruled on this issue. Even if Section 3 does apply to Trump, it is not clear who would have the authority to disqualify him. The Constitution gives Congress the power to establish the time, place, and manner of holding elections for senators and representatives, but it does not say who has the power to disqualify candidates. Ultimately, the decision of whether or not to disqualify Trump from running for president would likely be made by a court. If Trump is challenged on his eligibility, the case would likely go to the Supreme Court, which would have to decide whether Section 3 applies to him and whether Congress or the states have the power to disqualify him. In addition to the legal considerations, there are also political considerations that would need to be taken into account. If Trump is disqualified from running for president, it would be a major political event that would have a significant impact on the election. The decision would likely be controversial, and it could lead to protests and demonstrations. It would be the hottest potato to possibly handle. The decision on whether or not to disqualify Donald Trump from contesting in the 2024 presidential election is a complex one that would have far-reaching consequences. It is a decision that would need to be made carefully, taking into account all of the legal and political considerations, and Laurence H. Tribe argues that Donald J. Trump is constitutionally disqualified from holding any office under the United States Constitution, including the presidency. The authors base their argument on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment, which prohibits anyone who has engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the state from holding office. The authors argue that Trump's actions in the lead up to and on January 6, 2021 clearly meet the bar of insurrection or rebellion. They point to Trump's repeated claims that the 2020 election was stolen, his encouragement of his supporters to march to the Capitol, and on his failure to take any action to stop the violence as evidence of his guilt. The authors acknowledge that there is no precedent for disqualifying a former president from holding office. However, they argue that the framers of the Constitution included Section 3 of the 14th Amendment precisely to prevent someone like Trump from ever again becoming president. And they say that the provision has a self-working mechanism inbuilt into it. They conclude by urging the American citizens to uphold the Constitution and prevent Trump from ever again holding office. The qualification of presidential candidates in every state of the USA to be allowed on the ballot is decided by the state's election officials. The specific requirements vary from state to state, but they typically include the following. The candidate must be a natural born citizen of the United States. The candidate must be at least 35 years of age. The candidate must have been a resident of the United States for at least 14 years. The candidate must file a petition with the state's election officials gathering a certain number of signatures from registered voters in the state. The candidate must pay a filing fee. And above all, he or she should not be otherwise disqualified from contesting for the office. The decision to decide on disqualification rests therefore with the Secretary of State in the state administration. Unlike in India, we cannot have a public interest litigation mounted before the Supreme Court. Would a Democratic Party-led state bite the provocative bullet to disqualify Trump from being on the ballot? Trump would love it. He would not love it anything more than this. He may feel secure and comforted with 3 of his nominees forming the skewed 6-3 conservative majority on the 9 on the Supreme Court bench. The prospects of a political versus constitutional versus social battle on the card, which may get onto the streets, is a mouth-watering prospect. America deserves the chaos. They chose it, elected it, continue to swear by the candidate with GOP in his back pocket. Let us celebrate the exposure of the hypocrisy of United States of abomination. Imagine Donald J. Trump disqualified or elected to office in 2024. Either would be something truly unprecedented as unparalleled in any democratic lore. Secure in the belief that glitches and all, our centralized electoral system with uniform practices pan-India serves us well. Let us enjoy the dance of the devil in the US democracy with vicarious thrill. US democracy tottering on the brinks may not augur well, yet it serves them right to reconsider their continued claim as policemen of the universe. Believe me, the economist from London, has waxed eloquent to our Prime Minister to rein in the stunning, ill-informed Indian media on the foreign affairs that is now going on in the entire universe. There could be none better than what is going on in America for economists to be concerned about, and not about Indian media taking note of all these developments. We are where we are, and we are much better informed than what the economists can give us. Obliged.